Hello and welcome to Virtually Inspired, Senior Planet Colorado's first art show. So today is June 12th and we have 4 featured artists. And so our first artist that will be talking about her journey into the world of art, as well as the 3 pieces that she has submitted, will be Jennifer. And it's not letting me. I tested all this before and it's not working. It's okay, let's try again. Oh my goodness. Elizabeth and I tested this whole thing and it worked perfectly. And of course now it's not going to work perfectly. Try again.
Do the arrow keys move you from slide to slide?
Nope. And they did before. Yeah, they worked perfectly before when we did the test. Let's see if I just go into it this way.
Judy, should I get off and come back in? That way you have an extra space for someone?
No, it's fine. Absolutely fine. Okay, so we're going to have to do this the ugly way. It doesn't want to do it with the full screen version, I'm sorry to say. So Jennifer Steck, our first artist and the one who helped me put this all together, will you unmute and tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey, and then we'll start to go on to each piece. So I'll stop the share while you're talking. Go ahead, Jennifer.
Well, good morning, everybody. It's a thrill to be here. And thanks, Judy, for coming up with such a great idea. I know a lot of us artists had shows coming up and all of that. And we got very excited about those things. And then just like everybody else's life, everything came to a screeching halt. So this is a perfect way for us to talk about our art and stay inspired and connect with people again. So thank you. So let me give you just a little bit of background. So I retired about 4.5 years ago from a 32-year career in law enforcement with the Denver Police Department. I worked in a variety of assignments throughout the years, and when I left, I was the captain in charge of juvenile intake. And it was a good time for me to leave. It was time for kind of a new adventure. And I'd created most of my life just in a variety of ways. I've taken classes over the years. And I knew as I was prepping for retirement that I wanted to plan that out just a little bit. So I planned some volunteer opportunities and I planned taking classes because I knew I loved to create. And it was kind of unexpected that my art journey turned into a full-blown, full-time passion when people started seeing my work and saying, well, I want to buy that. And I was kind of confused by that. It's like, okay, people actually like my work. So not only is it fun to create, but I was really introduced to an amazing world of other artists who were very supportive and collectors who were interested in my work. And so I finally kind of thought through it. Well, what is the direction I want to go? And it just seemed like such an amazing opportunity and an amazing journey. And so here I am, 4.5 years later, teaching classes, continuing to paint new things, and just loving every minute of playing in my area of passion. So that's how it all started.
Thank you, Jennifer. So we'll go ahead now and start to look at some of those pieces. So if you can make sure you're seeing things in the largest format you can on your screen, because I know these could look small. This is actually a good sized piece, a pretty tall piece. So go ahead, Jennifer.
So this painting is Big Brothers. It's done in acrylic on a gallery wrapped canvas. Early on in the process, I was painting on paper, and you can see a lot of the stuff behind me is on paper. So transitioning over to canvas presented a challenge, and it's actually been really fabulous. It does different things than working on paper does. So Big Brothers here is 36 inches tall and 12 inches wide. And the concept behind Big Brothers is that it's always good for us to have somebody watching out for us. But in turn, when I look at a lot of the little dogs and my cat, I've got two dogs. Albus Dumbledog is a 100-pound Labradoodle, and he's huge. And then I have a golden retriever. And then I have a black cat that weighs about 10 pounds who's 16. And the little guy runs the house. So the cat is in charge of all of us, including me. And so sometimes when we look at the stature and we assume that the smallest little being there, is the quietest and the one that needs protection, in many cases, the littlest one is the one who's in charge of everything. So it just kind of made me laugh when I was designing it and working on it, and to include the Doberman, which I always consider to be a really tough dog, in there, just kind of made it extra fun, just because of the fact that, yeah, they're big brothers to this little dog, but the little dog's in charge. And then Kindred Spirits is really a special painting, probably because that's the way I kind of feel about me and my critters. So it's 24 by 24. It has amazing texture on it. There is a lot of collage in there, including fabric. And then if you look, well, it would be on the left-hand side of the painting, but on our right, as we're looking at the screen, there's an actual stainless steel dog tag that dog is holding that says Kindred Spirits on it. So this one took quite a bit of a journey, and I think as most artists, we are working on different pieces, and at some point they all hit what I consider to be an ugly stage, where you just got some of the background layers and just a few things on and you're going, is this really gonna work? Am I really happy with where this is? And what I discovered is usually when I push through that part of the painting, that stage, is actually what leads on to the next level of things. And so this truly represents the relationship that people have with their particular animals. And if you're anything like me, and Ray, you and your cat and all of that, I don't know where I would be without my animals. They always know when I need that extra bit of attention, and they're there for me, and they love me just the way I am. And it makes a huge difference in my ability to go out in the world and interact with people.
That's lovely.
And then this final piece, Dearest Laura. This one came about because I have some old letters that my mom had. And I was going through the box of some of the things that I had, and some of them I couldn't identify. Okay, who was Laura? And so those pieces I wanted to add to some of my work so that there would be a life beyond the history. And so if you look at this particular piece, it's just a small 8 by 10. There's the actual antique letter from somebody I don't know to Laura that I tore up. And so on the left-hand side, you'll see where the writing says, "Dearest Laura." It was a letter to Laura. And so once I got the letter on, I just had to kind of discover who Laura was. And so again, this one's a mixed media piece with a lot of collage in there. It was really a fun piece to do. And the fact that the antique letter is in there makes it extra special to me. So there's some history with this one.
Jennifer, I love how you layer so many pieces, into this. It's not just a painting, so it's just fascinating. Now, so I'm going to open it up. Does anybody have, I actually have a question before I let anybody else ask a question. If someone wanted a piece done with like their pet or pets, do you do that type of commission work?
I do on occasion. They're doing a commissioned piece for somebody, especially when you're talking about their animal. It's really, it's kind of a lot of pressure in the sense that you want to do it right and you want to capture the personality of an animal that as an artist I haven't met before. And so I do take commissions, but I only take them one at a time. And it might take me up to a couple of months to get it done, because that way I can really focus on it, really get the story. But as you've seen, my work is very quirky. So the painting, while I hope that it will contain some of the personality of your animal and some of the physical kind of representations of that, it's not realistic. And so just so that you're aware when we start that it's going to have maybe the feel of your animal, but not be a perfect representation.
Also, do you happen to have handy any one of your business cards that you can hold up?
You know what? I don't. I
darn.
handed them all out to Senior Planet people.
I know. I have mine, but it's upstairs. Anyway, Jennifer has on her business cards, they're squares, and they're all of her different pieces of artwork, and it's almost like a collector's club. You love to get all these different cards, so they're just so interesting and unique. So I just wanted to point that out. Her creativity.
They're fun. When you're trying to introduce yourself to somebody and you say you're an artist, it's always nice to have something that shows how your work and how it speaks to the world. And let's face it, mine is different than a lot of people's work. And so I just want people to know,
it's
what that looks like.
And the other thing too that Jennifer has quite a talent in is naming her pieces. So I've seen, there's quite a number of them now at the Senior Planet Center. Before we closed down, I got to view all of that and see the unique names that just go perfectly with the image that you're looking at. So it's you've got a lot of talent in that regard. I just want to let everybody know that if you want to get any information, for connecting with any of the artists, just throw your email into the chat. And then I'll be sure that you get, I'll give you the recording and all of the information, the handouts that we have about the artists. So that will be available by this weekend. I'll get it to you. So any questions for Jennifer? Go ahead, Jan.
Did you have some pieces at a biscuit cafe on West 29th and Sheridan?
I did. Last year I was in a solo show there. It was amazing, especially against those really cool brick walls.
It was beautiful. And I miss going to coffee shops and cafes and seeing art, because it's so beautiful to have the time to have a biscuit and look at the wall. And somewhere in my house, I probably have one of those little business cards too. It's nice
Well,
to
you know,
see you.
it is fun. And the fact that they change the art out. And so it's like every time you go into some of these places, and the biscuit shop in particular, they really pay attention and invite specific artists to show there. And so it's like going to a whole new art show every time you go in for a cup of coffee and their fabulous biscuits.
We have the Park Hill Cafe at Ivy and Colfax, and they hang some really nice shows too. I
Oh, I'll
miss
have to
them.
go in there and check that out.
Mhm.
Any other questions for Jennifer? Go ahead, Mary. Oh, let's get you off mute first.
From Bethesda, Maryland. And I just wondered, in your Dearest Laura piece, what is the symbolism of the hands?
So the hands are making a heart symbol.
Right.
And so just the fact that she was dearest to somebody who was writing to her. So it's just kind of the relationship between the people just interacting, and the love between them is what I was hoping to represent.
It looks like a Maryland crab. Also with her hands, the way you painted them. So I just wondered if there was any connection to the sea.
No, but I'll have to take a look at that for future paintings. Maybe I need a crab in some of my paintings. That would
Yes.
be fun.
Actually, now that you say that, Mary, I see that, like the crab. Yeah, this might be a hit in Maryland, this painting.
Yes, well, that's being from Maryland. I kind of wondered if there might be some tie-in.
Now, isn't that interesting how our frame of reference so affects what we see in a painting or a piece of art, right? It's just incredible. Anybody else have a question or comment? No? Oh, yes. Go ahead, Janice. Let me get you off. Lower your hand and unmute you. There you go.
Thank you. Jennifer, thank you so much for explaining your art, sharing it with us. I'm somewhat of a minimal, eclectic person, and some of the art I have is all different, but I'm really taken by yours. And I think, I don't know, I've never seen you or your work before, but what I guess I'm trying to say is I really think you could go far if you can get someone to put it out there to the public, because you have a lot of talent.
Oh, you're so wonderful. Thank you very much. You know what, I'm just essentially about 2.5 years into the journey. And as a matter of fact, it should be Monday. I have a website, but the new website that I've been building since the first of the year actually goes live, I think, on Monday. So it's been kind of a block by block kind of thing. And I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful because I really try with my art to make people laugh and make people smile and think about things, because I think it's a tough time. Yeah. It's a tough time. And with all of the division going on, we really have so much more in common, I think, and we tend to focus on a lot of the differences. So if I can make people smile and laugh, then I will have accomplished one of my primary goals. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. Here. All right. So now let me go back to sharing the screen, unless anybody else, did I miss anybody? Everybody got their question answered? Oh, Michael, go ahead.
Jennifer was one of our art demonstrators at our monthly meeting of the Aurora Artists Guild a couple months ago. And it was wonderful, Jennifer, how you shared your process. It's almost akin to the stories of Michelangelo discovering what the image was in the piece of marble. He didn't know what it was until he started. Could you explain your process a little bit? Because it's fascinating.
Yeah.
Oh, Michael, you used my name in the same sentence as Michelangelo. Oh my goodness. So about half my paintings are created from the background. And so what happens is I'll make an abstracted background and wait to see what I see in that background. And actually part of Laura came from that, I think, and Kindred Spirits definitely did. And so it's just a process of play. You know, you throw the paint on, you throw some collage on, and then it's almost like the characters and critters want to be born. And I know that in this journey, sometimes it's been hard, and you get all those doubts. You have this little critic that sits on your shoulder saying, you're never going to paint another good painting, or you're not good enough, or you're not this, or you're not that. And then when something pops out of a background that would not otherwise exist, it just reminds me that, no, I can't not do it. I need to do it. And I loved every minute doing the demonstration for the Aurora Artists Guild. Everybody was fabulous. And I mean, that happened the week. I mean, I think on the Monday, then everything shut down later that week, pretty much. So it was a real honor. Thank you, Michael.
And Jennifer, we actually on this call very early on, when you sent me the video of you drawing in the book and practicing.
Yes.
We watched that. And so one of our members said that should be made into a coloring book. It was so great.
I know I'm going to have to play with that concept. There's so many ways you can apply stuff. But I guess, yeah, so I do it in this is my journal. And so I just draw when I have ideas and throw them in there. So yeah, I actually think it would be a fun coloring book.
Definitely. So anyway, that was a Senior Planet member that thought of that one. Okay, so now we will move on. I think everybody's had their questions answered. Let's go. Okay.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
So Michael, you're up next, and we would just love to hear about your journey and how you got interested, or in how long you've been doing this. And you're correct, you're a priest, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So let's hear about how you got started making these little tiny paintings.
Okay, well, let's see, am I unmuted? Yes.
Yes, you are. Go ahead.
Okay, well, I've been doing artwork ever since grade school, and it's really been a wonderful way of expressing some of my more introverted creativity. Actually went to Syracuse University and got a degree in art education, but it was a bizarre, out-of-the-box version of art education called synesthetic education. It sort of took the premise that we learn any subject better when the information is presented through a variety of senses. So when you're teaching a history lesson, having the music of the period as a part of the lesson, looking at the artwork enhances the learning experience. So the program was designed to have art teachers work in tandem with the teachers of the other disciplines and subjects. That wasn't what I had signed up for, so I changed my major like lots of college students do. And for one semester, I became an interior design major. Well, it was in that program where we were called upon to do illustrations of our designs, room illustrations, that's when I first got into the medium of watercolors. And it's been my primary focus ever since. Actually never went in, I did go back into the art education program and graduated with that degree, but never taught, went into retail advertising in Rochester, New York, and then moved to New York City and was junior art director for Macy's. But that wasn't quite fulfilling for me. And I had been active in church stuff forever. So I thought, well, maybe I'll try that church thing full time. So I joined a Franciscan community. That didn't work out. But it became a lifelong ministry for me, particularly in elder care, nursing home situations and things like that. I was a chaplain for years. Then I eventually moved to Colorado and found this church, the Ecumenical Catholic Communion, and they called me to ordination. So that's where the ordination piece comes in. I was a hospice chaplain here in Colorado for a number of years. And when I retired from that is when I took up the art again. And I started painting more. The miniatures began at the encouragement of a friend of mine who's a miniature woodworker, he and his wife. And they are very active with the Denver Museum of Miniatures, Dolls, and Toys. And I just, out of a whim, did my first miniature watercolor, literally an inch wide. And you'll see some of the works coming up. And he said, oh, there's a market for that. You really have to focus on that. So that has been my principal focus recently. I have done some of the larger works. One you'll see later too.
Okay, thank you, Michael. So we'll go ahead and show these beautiful works. So here's the first one. Okay, Michael, can you tell us about this?
Most of my work is nature studies from photographs that I take on nature walks. As a lot of people know, in this time of sequestering and staying safer at home, getting out into nature has really been a salvation for a lot of people. And that's always been a very spiritually reinvigorating experience to be out in nature for me. So this is from a butterfly photograph that I took. Again, the image itself is an inch square.
Michael, who makes these tiny little frames for you?
I started out just buying miniature molding from craft stores and mitering them myself and assembling them. But I was finding that it was taking me longer to frame the pieces than it was painting them. So actually the process that I use is I spray the original watercolor with an archival UV protectant. And then I mat them and frame them with an acid-free acetate. So it actually looks like a miniature painting under glass. Recently, I've taken to buying pre-made frames online, and that has simplified it a little bit.
Okay. All right, let's take a look at the next one. And I'll try to enlarge the screen. Go ahead, Michael.
Okay, this was a photograph from a walk in a park north of San Francisco. Estero Stilt is the name of this little tributary in a little delta. One of the things that when I began my working with watercolors in various mediums, can you bring me back to my screenshot? Here we've got one of those art projects that everybody has always done where you have to reproduce an image in various little, if you put it on speaker view, it'll fill up the whole view for you. Reproducing of image in various mediums. Okay, so the first one is a news magazine collage. Then there's a water-soluble colored pencil drawing, then an ink drawing, colored ink, and then a watercolor at the other end. I got a B+ for it. The instructor said, nice layout. However, instead of making all of them alike, I'd like to try doing what the medium does. So watercolor has that bleeding tendency. Try and use that, the instructor said, in your representation to make the medium dictate what the image evolves into. So if we go back to that little painting, you can see that the watercolor in itself, particularly like in the water, has that richness, even at that tiny little scale. Remember, it's just an inch tall. Actually, I have it right here.
Oh, wait, let me stop the share. Okay, go ahead, Michael.
You can see in the water the dappling of color, of texture, that really brings the image to life and gives it that spiritual nature that's captured. One of the things that even my high school art teacher told me as a criticism was, Michael, you work too tight. You're too detailed. You have to loosen up. And one would think that watercolors would loosen me up. But you know, you work with your strengths. And when you're dealing with miniatures, working tight is a gift.
See, you found your niche, right?
Yeah. And then this is one of the larger pieces. I haven't worked larger than this because this is the largest watercolor paper that I've been able to find just locally. Jewel tone set in gold. It's a wood duck that I photographed in a stream nearby the house. And I particularly want to call your attention to the variations in color. There are so many different golds, so many different grays, particularly in the water, from warm to cool, from golden to a purplish hue. And I think that's very important, in my work, sensitivity for color, really looking and seeing what's in there. realizing that, you know, the reflection of that dappled, rusty maroon breast on this duck is not the same color when it's reflected in the water. The whiteness of its flank turns a greenish tint in the reflection. So that's just holds a world of interest for me. And I love capturing that, or trying to.
So Michael, when you look at the other whites, that's so interesting. So the one white is green, but then the other whites reflect more closer to white, you know, or bluish gray.
Yeah, and I think that's due to the textures of the individual feathers.
Yeah.
Because the feathers going in one direction are going to bounce light down into the water in a different way, and it's actually going to change the color.
That's fascinating. So does anybody have questions for Michael?
Yes, Ray.
Michael, thank you very much for taking my call. Long-time listener, my first-time caller. I just measured 1 inch of a postage stamp, and my goodness sakes, it's like 1 inch by something. How long does it take you to do that? That is just an amazing piece.
Thank you, thank you. Yeah, this the butterfly is literally 1 inch square. It varies depending on the inspiration, on the subtleties in color that I'm trying to capture. I don't know if you can see. Let's see, where did it go? This is one of my brushes. Let's hold it up to something light.
Wow.
So this is one of the Chinese brushes. So the hairs of the brush really do taper down to a very fine point. I must have dropped. Oh, here's another one that I use. So, and I'm so nearsighted that usually I just have to take my glasses off and get close to it and paint that way. I do have some new trifocals, and my more recent ones, I have been able to keep my glasses on, but you do what you gotta do.
Thank you, Michael.
It does take a steady hand.
That's true. So tiny. So R. Lynn has your hand up. I'm not sure who that is. Do you want to I'll unmute you? Go ahead and ask your question.
So my question is, are all of the ones that you have on your website, on the miniatures, are they all original pieces, or do you do reproductions of those and sell the reproductions of the original miniatures?
The miniatures themselves, the only time that I have tried to reproduce them was when I included them in a calendar and had and featured a miniature for each month. And that I just did with desktop publishing and printing at home. Didn't really sell too much, so I didn't make one for 2020 like I did the past 2 years. But because the nature of the miniatures is so unique, they're really only the one of a kind miniatures that I sell. I don't try to reproduce them.
Great, beautiful work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Michael? Okay, I'm not seeing. All right, so let's just move on. Those are beautiful, Michael. I for some reason, I find miniatures I'm just very attracted to that as well.
And when I had had a vendor's table at the Denver Museum of Miniatures, Dolls, and Toys for several years. And I had just tried to sell the original paintings unframed. But people didn't, the miniature people want something ready to hang in their miniature little house. So that's why I've focused on trying to frame them all now in the hopes of increasing sales for that market.
Yeah, oh, I can see that. So is this people that have very elaborate doll houses?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Okay. All right. Well, let's move on to Kathy. And Kathy, would you mind telling us a bit about your art medium and your journey? I'm going to get you off mute. Kathy, where are you? Oh, you've got to unmute yourself, Kathy. There you go. And remember the gallery view and speaker view. So if you put it on speaker view, you'll see the artist larger and full screen, and anything they show or hold up, you'll be able to see better. Go ahead, Kathy.
Yeah, so I'm relatively new to the art scene. We moved to Denver about 10 years ago, and from Boston. And I had a frame shop there. It was a mobile frame shop. So I would go to people's home and office and design on site and then take it back and complete it and then deliver it back to them. So when I came here, I was like, you know, should I start that again? And I know I could do it so much better because I had learned so much, but it was really physical, like carrying in all the frame samples and the mats. And so I thought, if it takes me 5 years to be profitable, then I'll be too old to do it. So I decided not to do that, but I didn't want to be retired, right? So I started joining meetup groups and doing photography and taking workshops. So I started out my art journey with doing photography, and then I learned in the workshops about software programs that you could manipulate the photography. And so I would use that and make abstract art out of a photograph. So you really couldn't tell what the photograph was. So, and that was just really fun. And I really liked some of the images. But then I wanted to paint, and I've never painted before. So I started taking some private lessons from Victoria Kwasinski at Park Hill. And she would come to my house and give me a private lesson. So we started out doing, she brought her supplies and we were doing oil paints. So she said, okay, so we'll let that dry for a week and then we'll do something else. And I'm like, a week? You know, I don't think I have the patience for this, right? And so I said, would you mind if I did a different medium? And she said, no, not at all, because I can teach any of it, right? And so, so then I started using acrylics. And so I mainly use acrylics now, but I say I'm like the dog and the squirrel. I see a new medium and I'm like, squirrel. So I've done like the acrylic, and I've done resin and alcohol ink and gold leaf. And so I love experimenting and I love trying new things. So in the beginning, I sort of had a hard time calling myself an artist, you know, because I didn't have the experience, right? And when the frame shop was in Stapleton, Art and Framing, I don't know if any of you remember it, but she had a gallery. And so she invited me to show my work in the gallery. And so she sent me a picture one day and like there was a blank space on the wall. And she said, the orchid left, right? And so I was like, oh, wow, well, I'll send you another one. But before I could send her another one, she's like, make it 2 because another piece sold, right? And so that was just the motivation that I needed, just to give me the confidence that, like you were saying, Jennifer, that somebody actually liked my work, right? And so then, yeah, it just motivated me to keep going. And so we've done open studios here, like for the last 9 years. This year it's going to be virtual. So this is a good thing to see. And we have our nonprofit organization, Stapleton Artist, and we have programs each month for the members. So I just really go from one thing to another, trying new things. And it's almost every piece I do is some kind of an experiment. So.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah, that keeps everybody on their toes then when they're looking at your work, wanting to know. I wanted to just show this. Could you just talk about the painting and the fabric?
Yes. So the painting is acrylic, and the white that you see is sea salt. And so then I had that scanned and then sent it. There's a online, spoonflower.com. They will print your images on fabric, and they have all different kinds of fabric. And so I had it printed on this fabric, and then I had a seamstress make the dress.
Yeah, that is spectacular.
It's so fun to wear your art.
Yeah. I can. Okay, so let's look at the first piece here, and if you can talk about that.
Okay, this is acrylic on paper, and this one I did by just putting the paint on the paper and then moving it around with a credit card. So you know, I just love trying different things, and I really appreciated the depth that came out of that and the texture. I don't think the photograph actually shows the texture as much as it is, but yeah, so that's, I just love doing things like that. So that was just fun, a fun piece.
Yeah, that's the problem with the virtual art show, right? We can't see that texture.
I know, right? You can't get that close.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, so that was that piece, and it's like 15 by 19, but I like the big mats. I'm a framer, right?
Yeah, right.
So yeah, so I like the big mats.
And I love the title, Complexity Theory.
Right? It was kind of like, that's kind of what I was going through when I was doing it. You know, it was pretty complex.
Interesting. Okay, let's look at this piece.
And I do find that titling them is one of the hardest things. So this one is acrylic on paper. And it's the thicker paint. So even though I work in acrylics, there, you know, are all kinds, like there's the fluid and the soft and the regular and then heavy body. So there's all kinds of different things. And this one has more paint on it and more heavy body.
So there are all those different types of acrylic paints that you
Yes.
Okay.
And you get a different effect from each of them.
Hmm.
And you can mix them too. So and I do that sometimes.
And okay, so 10 by 13 finished and 19 by 22 framed. All right, let's go on to the next. This one is so colorful.
So this was like a demo that I did for Open Studios last year. And it kind of came about as an accident, because I was doing, it's like charcoal on paper and then alcohol ink on plexiglass, and then you put them together. So we were doing demos at the Stanley last year, and I had some little miniature ones. And so it came about by accident as like having it painted on glass, and then having an image, and then putting them together. It just changes everything. I don't know if you can see it.
So explain where is the plexiglass, that matte looking thing?
No, it's like the glass on the front of the frame.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So there is a mat in between.
Right, that is so neat. So the mat is part of the piece.
Yeah. So I love the alcohol ink because, you know, it's kind of, the colors are brilliant, right? I love the colors. And it's kind of like, you can't totally control it, you know, so some of the things you like, some of them you don't, but you can reactivate it and continue to manipulate it.
Very cool. Okay, let me get it back. So, any questions for Kathy? See, Dan's got a picture of a cat there, like those eyes were looking at me. And I want to let you know that any of the artwork, Peg, go ahead. Let me unmute you. Well, you're on mute, Peg. We can't hear anything you're saying. There you
Okay. What is alcohol ink? I've never heard of that.
It is just that. it is alcohol ink. And you activate it with alcohol, like rubbing alcohol, like you would water with watercolors. And it's a liquid, it's an ink.
Okay.
Yeah. It's
never heard of it.
Well, you know, I hadn't either. It was like one of those new squirrel things. So when I heard about it, and so I just had to try it. And so I did. And then one of my friends was here, and her mother was here too. And she said, "Oh, you remember when you used to do that in grade school?" So it's not a new medium, but it was new to me.
Huh. Any other questions? Okay, Janice, let me unmute you. Go right ahead.
Hi, Kathy.
Hi,
Do you
Janice.
do your own framing as well? Because that really enhances your work. It's so
Thank you.
creative.
Yes, I do.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's an interesting journey to be someone who highlighted people's work with the framing, and then now you've incorporated the framing as part of your art and design with your own art. So that's beautiful.
One of my clients from Boston came here to visit, and like I said, I hadn't done art before. I mean, framing was my art. And she came and she looked around and said, "When did this happen?" You know.
You know, that is something that, you know, of course at Senior Planet, you know, I don't know if you realize, but we have 5 impact areas, and one of the 5 is creative expression. And it's viewed as, obviously, it's incredibly important part of aging, and a really wonderful part of aging. And, you know, whether it's, you know, our life experience or the time, you know, our use of time is different, our choice and priorities become different. And so much creativity has come out of so many people, you know, later in life. So, you know, obviously we're highlighting artists today that are 60 or over, but it's just incredible to look at even some of the most renowned artists and who did not start until very, very late in life. So with that, any other comments or questions for Kathy before we move on to Elizabeth? Okay.
Thank you.
So thank you, Kathy. All right, let's get this lined up. And Elizabeth, we want to hear about your journey and your type of art. So can you tell us a bit about that? Are you off mute? Wait, let me stop and make sure. Oh, you're muted. You've got to unmute yourself, Elizabeth. There you go. Okay. Let me put that back up.
Okay.
No, we'll just let you speak and then we'll put your work up after that.
Okay. Well, I'm moved here from Princeton, New Jersey in June. Yes. And I've been artist lonely, was what I call it, you know, and it made it worse here with this virus. But anyway, I was brought up in Manhattan, New York City, and I went to art school in New York, and my major was fashion illustration. I didn't, it was in the 60s, and when I went out to work, there was not much fashion illustration. They were making a transition into photography. But I did get the opportunity to work at the Garment Center in New York City, which was a lot of fun. Yeah. And then I got married and got divorced and landed up being a single working mom. Yes. And so in Princeton, New Jersey, they're not looking for fashion illustrators. I landed up in graphic arts, okay, and landed up working for Princeton University Press for 8 years in book composition, you know, and photography. And I got a very good education because I was reading the books that I was putting together. Yeah. It was a print production, really. You know, I was in the printing area. Yeah. So I did that, and then like personal computers came out, you know, and kind of put me out of a job, really. It was very hard to freelance because it was the Macintosh at that time, the Apple computer, which was very expensive if you wanted to, and the software was expensive, and it changed all the time, you know. So I landed up in printing, customer service printing, helping between the customer and the printing, right? So then, so I did that for a long time, and then and I tried to keep up my art, you know, part-time. And so anyway, when I retired, I started painting, okay? And I guess, so I think in about the last 10 years, I started, and I love watercolors. And likewise, what Mike was saying is the painting that's behind me is acrylic. Okay, I just finished it. Can you see it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very clearly.
All right. So, I mean, like with acrylic, you can use it like watercolor. You can use it like oil painting and everything like that. But I'm more of a traditional watercolorist, which means that you leave the white of the paper and you don't use black. You mix the black, okay? And I like doing the portraits and figures and only recently have I gotten into landscaping. You know, I have done plein air, going out and painting that way. And so when you do, let's say, acrylic, because I don't use white paint, I had to learn. I have to remember to use white paint here. You know, it's a totally different way of painting altogether, and it drives me crazy. You know? Like I'll mix the paint, and one you know, and I says, well, that's not the color I want, and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and that's all I wanted was a little bit of the paint. And then I say to myself, what do I do with all this paint now? And in watercolor, you don't squeeze you squeeze it from the tube, but it dries and you can still use it. You know, but with acrylic, it dries and you can't use it anymore. So all that paint I have to throw away, which drives me nuts. So this one in here is an acrylic, and that's me. About, I don't know, 30 years ago, 40 years. Well, I think I was about 37 or something like that there. And these are friends of mine here.
So was that from a photograph?
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's neat.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's take a look at your pieces here. So go ahead, Elizabeth, would you explain this?
These are blackbirds, and it's sumo ink and watercolor, okay, on mulberry paper. And you can see the texture of the paper. Yeah. And I like using it because it won't make me do, I can't do detail because the paper is very, very absorbent. So, that's what I like about it. And I can't do pencil on this paper. So what I do is I do a sketch on tracing paper, and then I transfer it through a light box. So I actually paint so from the light box.
That's fascinating. So this piece is 34 by 25, pretty big.
And these blue blackbirds are very popular. I sold them a smaller piece. And so that may encourage me to make a larger one. And this painting got into a gallery here in Denver. And right now, I can't remember the name of the place. Oh, Miller. It was a speakeasy with, you go through the gallery to a bar. Yeah.
Where is that, Elizabeth? Right in the city, downtown?
Yeah, but it's closed now. It's an ice cream parlor now.
Oh.
A bar. Yeah. Which is, yeah. And I met a lot of artists there, and I was very happy. And I was hoping, you know, stay in contact with them. But
how about this piece?
Okay, this piece is watercolor also. And what I was trying to achieve, and the white, if you look at it, that's the white of the paper, except the white lines going over, but that's the white of the paper, okay? And when you use the white of the paper, it makes it sparkle more, you know? It doesn't, yeah. So this, what I was, well, I like the human figure, especially the woman figure, and I like movement. The name of this is Movement. and it's actually dancers on a stage. But what I was trying to achieve was to get rich black in the background. I worked more on that background than any other part of the, and it's like multicolor. It's sumo ink, and ultramarine blue, and all different colors, but I wanted to portray black. And on the lower part, that's a real black. So you can see the difference.
Mm-hmm.
Got it, yeah. And it's very hard to get a pure black in watercolor, you know, because it streaks and all. You can do it, but it's a lot of work.
Yeah, and this is another larger piece, 30 by 22. Beautiful. Okay, let's look at the last piece here.
Okay. So this, the bluebirds, I started off with a smaller one, and I've done this bluebird a lot. And I did this here in Colorado. Okay. Again, it's on mulberry paper, and it's actually mixed media. There's gouache in it and everything. And this bird is on my is on my toilet seat.
I remember you told me that.
When I moved here, the toilet seat was all scratched up, and I just thought that this bird was appropriate to be sitting on my toilet. So,
That is great.
yeah.
Okay, so does anyone have any questions or comments for Elizabeth? Go ahead, Ray.
I love the fat little birds there. Even the blackbirds, you can really, the environment is just chilly out. It's wintertime, obviously, and it really portrays a real emotion and an element. I just really enjoy those. Very nice.
I did call, I don't know what, that one is a bluebird, but I named another one a bird with an attitude. Yeah.
Now, we've got some questions in the chat. Lucy asks, wonderful blackbirds. When you use the white, it doesn't what? Sumo birds?
I don't use white paint. I use white of the paper, which sometimes.
And it doesn't sparkle. Is that what you said?
Sparkle.
Yeah. If you use white paint in watercolor, it doesn't give it a sparkle.
Right. Thank you. Ray answered that, actually. Thank you. Love it.
And then, okay, Ray, you asked your question. I just want to make sure I've got everybody's. So did anybody else have a question or comment for Elizabeth?
Would you give me Elizabeth's last name again, please?
Peck. So what I'll be doing.
Gregory Peck.
Yeah, like Gregory Peck, P-E-C-K. And what I'll do is if you put your email in the chat, I'll make sure you get all the information from the artists. And, I'll include their photo and a picture so you know who's who and who did what. And I'll email that to you. So you just throw that email in that chat box. You just click on the chat. If you use your cursor or your finger to activate your Zoom screen, there's a chat box there. And you can go ahead and put your email in there. It'll say type message here, and then you hit the enter key. Great, I see people putting them in. Go ahead, Iris.
Excuse me. I just wanted to say that all four artists, all four different, and all four extremely interesting. And I really enjoyed all of their paintings.
Oh, I'm so glad. We love hearing that. Oh, and look at lots of people are applauding. This is our way, by the way, of applauding and giving our love for what you've done here on our Zoom calls and these wonderful gatherings. Anyone else have a comment or question?
Michael does.
Go ahead, Michael.
So Elizabeth, do you have any go-to colors for when you're making your black? I know.
Yeah, ultramarine blue and like raw umber or burnt sienna makes a very good rich black.
Yeah. I usually use a hooker green.
Oh, I never tried hooker green.
Yeah.
With red?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I put like a hooker green in here. I mean, this painting, I didn't want it to come out this way. I wanted it to come out loose and very colorful and everything. But it seems like you can't make yourself do what you know you want to do. I think it takes, I want to be more abstract. And I went to the Art Students League with this and took 2 months of a class on Sundays. I loved it. I love New York City. But I mean, what he was doing, I just couldn't do it. I mean, it just went against my grain. I wanted to, really trying hard, but it just, you know, I mean, he went and did a demonstration on a student's work, okay? And he had a pot of water on the floor with a big, it looked like a brush that you do wallpaper with. And he dipped it in the water and threw the white paint at the it just, I mean, I would love to do that.
But you can't bring yourself to.
Yeah, I do it a little bit, you know, but not the way him, not through the whole thing. I mean, really. I mean, and then he wipes it off. Which, and then you stand there and you see the image slowly come back up again. It was amazing.
Magical. You know, it's so funny, Elizabeth, as you're talking, I'm looking at the other artists and they're shaking their heads. So you can, it's interesting how you all can teach each other and relate to each other and what some of your experiences are. Well, this has been, I think, for me, one of the best programs that we've done. I'd love to hear your comments and feedback as well. We really want to do this again. I can't thank you enough, Elizabeth, Kathy, and Michael and Jennifer. You did an extraordinary job. You gave us an inside view of what it is to be an artist, and that everybody doesn't come to it the same way, and yet you produce the most beautiful things. It's just wonderful.
I forgot the artists that are from Boulder, Colorado. I'm in a show at our gallery and there, okay? And
wonderful.
It's a upcycle. It's called Irish Old Lace.
You know what you can do, all four of you, if you are participating in anything coming up at any point in time, email me that and I'll make sure everybody gets that information. I'll be publishing this video on social media, and you can do the same, as well as make sure that the information sheet on all four artists is given to everybody. So you'll have all their contact information, and you're more than welcome to purchase art, but you don't deal with Senior Planet at all. You go directly to those artists. So thank you so much. And we will look forward to the next art show. Jennifer and I are going to work on doing this quarterly. So it should be a lot of fun. So everyone have a lovely day.
How do you use the group chat?
First of all, here, I'll stop